Welcome to Real Talk with Antoine D. Thurston, where we have real conversations with real people about real issues, y'all. I'm glad to have you. Got some good gospel jazz in the background.
Ha.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yes. I knew it was something.
Okay, good, good. What's up, cousin?
Hey, how you doing?
Wonderful, wonderful. Glad to have you. There's always a little technical difficulty going on. Something, always something.
I'm like, this is gonna work. This is
Yeah,
really gonna work.
definitely. And so everybody, thank everybody for tuning in for another episode of Real Talk with Antoine D. Thurston, where we have real conversations with real people about real issues, guys. And we're on another episode. We're talking about this time overcoming stigmas of mental illness. Um, and I am none other than your host, Antoine Thurston, a minister, elder, doctorate in theology, and I'm author of My Bondage and My Freedom: From the Mental Institution to the Pulpit, where I experienced depression, was addicted to pornography, and suffered from suicidal thoughts and even had suicidal attempts. And if you haven't gotten a copy yet, please go to my webpage, AntoineDThurston.com, and purchase a book. It is available in ebook and paperback as well. And I have my good friend here, none other than Dr. LaTracy Drux,
Yes.
who is also a pastor herself, minister of the gospel and preacher. And I just want you to introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what is it that you do.
Well, besides being a servant, and I don't like the way that this is going. Am I looking in the camera?
Yeah.
I'm trying, y'all. I'm really trying. Um, I am the owner of Black Authors Rock, and we work with individuals on learning how to not only tell their story, but also make money from it. I know spiritually we hear so often that we overcome by the word of our testimony, but it's a whole lot sweeter when you can get paid. So,
Yeah, definitely.
you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
so in the process of all of that, it is an honor to not only be on your platform, but also to be able to share my story publicly.
Yes, definitely, definitely. You have some other accomplishments that you have. I know you sent me that big old bio, so I wanted you to speak a little bit.
Listen, I was trying my best not to do that. It's so funny. Okay, so besides being a doctor of humanities, I have my master's in nonprofit management, as well as a master's in executive leadership and my bachelor's in business administration. And so with those titles, in addition to being, pastor and minister and ordained elder and a mommy, and a mom manager. My 8-year-old has her own business. We also have a bookstore on
Wonderful.
Keezer Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi. And so, yes, and a community of over 2,600 individuals online. We work with them on either being aspiring authors or making more money from being a published author. So I love what I do. I love serving. And I believe that a lot of people see titles and they see position and they don't see the struggle. And yet, because they don't see the struggle, they believe that it's easy, and it's not. They also see that, oh, well, she has this. Yeah, that does say that you can have it, but they don't see that in between. And I've always taken the whole assignment that God has given me to live out my life publicly, and yet knowing that this faith walk is not private. And so in the entire process, I love the fact that I can be transparent with my story and to be able to give someone hope and give someone some assistance in the process.
That's beautiful. So how long have you been pastoring?
Since 2017.
And ministering, how long?
1999, 21 years.
1999, okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's a good little minute. I was born in 1989. So you've been doing it about 22 years, just about. I'll be 32 next month. But so definitely we wanted to, when I heard your story, what you told me on the phone, it made me want to push forward into this topic even more. And so as a pastor and minister, you've been ministering for about over 20 years, pastoring for several years. What was your view of mental health or mental illness growing up?
Well, culturally, we are taught what happens at home stays at home. And when you're going through something, you just go to the church, you get on the altar, you pray, you fast, and you just believe God for your deliverance. Well, I never truly had a relationship with God, because even though the things that I went through, I didn't know how to accept the resources that he gave. So being in position, I didn't know anything about mental health. To be totally honest, I did not know. Ministering, I would see people being overtaken by demonic spirits, being overtaken by just issues in life, and yet I didn't realize that it was mental health, because culturally I saw more of the cultural side than I did the spiritual side. So I saw that people would mask the things that they went through with drugs and alcohol and sex. And so in all of that, I realized that over the years that it is mental health. And I thank God for the experiences, because when I moved here to Mississippi 10 years ago, I met an apostle here, and he has a ministry entitled Soul Healing, and he's a mental health therapist. And I really want to connect you guys, because he not only taught about the mental health side, but how it relates to the spiritual side. And so before then, I didn't know. I just thought, we're just going through, we're having issues, and and life happens, and you go and you pray and you believe God. It doesn't matter whether or not you're going through for years, and you don't necessarily tell the church what you're going through. That was another thing. And so I just look at that whole situation like, in ministry we didn't talk about it. So I suffered in silence many, many years. The childhood traumas, we didn't tell anybody. The rape and the molestation, we didn't tell anybody. And if you did, you got in trouble, because what happens in the house, you stay in the house. Whether you had a lack of anything in the house, you don't go to the church, you don't tell the church, but you go to church faithfully on Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturday morning, and all day Sunday. Yeah. And so I'll be honest, I did not want to walk into my calling as a minister 21 years ago. I was moonwalking. And even when I said yes to my call, I truly didn't walk in the saved life, because I wanted to still kick it. I still wanted to have fun. And I hid the mental health issues, the trauma issues behind life, even while I was doing church.
And so so you just acknowledged that. I didn't even know that. You said molestation. That is extremely traumatic. I got a friend that wrote a book called The Lessons from the Thorn, and she was molested at a young age, and with those certain sins of other people that they impede upon us with, there's shame that comes with that. Yeah. And sometimes with that shame and guilt, you don't want to express it. And sometimes when you do express it, sometimes people don't believe you. No. They don't want to believe you. And as a community and as a people, especially as the church, we have to be able to protect those that have been villainized.
But the church isn't equipped to do that, because majority of the time it happens in the church. Yeah. Or covered up from the church. But that's a whole nother conversation.
It's a whole conversation. Yes, I know. Trust me, I know. I heard some stories, and we cannot hear what we won't confront. And
Yes.
so with that, what was those stigmas? Because as you were talking about that shame, you didn't want to walk in your calling, and there's a lot of people right now that don't want to walk in the calling that God has called them to because
Mhm.
they're dealing with something mentally or emotionally that has happened 15, 20 years ago, but they're still battling with it because they have not exposed it or spoken about it. What were those stigmas that was racing through your mind?
Well, the stigmas were, I'm not going to be able to raise my children properly. I'm not equipped to have a business. I'm not equipped to handle the responsibilities of life. Even when I was younger, it was, oh, you're not going to be able to walk out this call that's on your life because of the fact that I hadn't dealt with the trauma. Um, I did not go through therapy until later on in life. I'll just be honest, because I was never taught that therapy is what we're supposed to do. I was taught that you're supposed to go to church. And so I was afraid to let people know that I had been even admitted into the mental hospital. Half the world, many folks didn't even know. And if I tell them the dates, they would be like, what? Wait a minute. I saw you then. I know you. Wait a minute. You were hosting an event here and there, and you were doing this, and you were global. And yes, making global impact, doing those things. And yet I was afraid to tell people my story because I knew someone may not want to hire me. Someone may not want to have me work with them because they don't know what I'm dealing with behind closed doors. But I am here to say, even in ministry, my pastor knew, and yet I was still asked to preach. You're supposed to preach through, whatever pain you're going through. You're supposed to preach through whatever situation you have going on. And a lot of people don't realize the stigma that comes along with that. So that is my truth. And you can see me today. And it was just as freeing for me to tell you my story over the phone. And I didn't, and we hadn't even conversed on that level. And yet there's people that are still suffering in silence because they are in the ministry and they are still hurting.
And some people, one thing I've learned about trauma was that I have a friend that's a psychologist, but she's also a Christian, and she exposed me to a lot of information and studies that even when it came to trauma or loss of any kind, uh, it can be misdiagnosed
Mm-hmm.
for mental illness. It can be misdiagnosed for post-traumatic stress disorder. It can be misdiagnosed for chronic depression or bipolar. And if you misdiagnose something, you mistreat it.
Mm.
And so some of these individuals, out of 8,800 so patients or clients, they were mistreated because they were misdiagnosed, and they were, instead of being healed of that grief or trauma, they were just medicating them. And
Yes.
some of us, we don't, we some of us, here's the revelation, some of us, we're not taking oxycodone, we're just taking a bunch of religion.
Mm.
We're medicated off of church, we're medicated off of sermons, but we're still not healed and delivered. And the thing about even my situation, I had a spiritual situation and a lot of things going on. They was filling me up full of prescriptions, but it still did not heal or deal with the trauma that I had dealt with in my life in those areas. And yes, there was a spiritual aspect, the demonic warfare part, but there were still inward parts of me as a man that were not dealt with and bruised. And
Mm-hmm.
some of us, we think, just taking prescriptions is going to do it. We have to get to the root of these issues, because if you don't get to the root of the issue, you can get a prescription all day long. It's still not going to deal with the root or heal the wound. And some of us were medicated off of sermons, off of convocations and meetings, but we're still broken when we go home. And
Mm.
until we really sit down with a counselor, a psychologist, pastoral counseling or whatnot, or however we do go about seeking out professional help, we won't really get the complete healing that we need. We're just going through the motions. I just saw my counselor 2 days ago, I believe, And they told me some things I need to work on and heal from in my own personal life. Because when you have trauma in your life of any kind, whether it's small or little, it can impact your life of years to come, or how we relate to people or treat people. And sometimes we don't even know it, but all this transgenerational trauma gets linked in. And because we never deal with it, we stay away from it. You know, we pray over it, but we never deal with it. It's the one thing to pray about something, but it's a whole nother issue to deal with it. And the only way we're going to deal with it is we talk about it. And so, you know, when you went through your meltdown, or your
You call it a meltdown.
it was a meltdown. Tell us about the actual meltdown itself.
Okay, you call it a meltdown. That's so funny. It's okay. I have been okay with calling it what it was. It was a mental breakdown, and I'm okay. I'm gonna move this way just a little bit because that good light just came on the phone, and I don't want the phone to go out. Okay, there we go. It was a couple years ago, and I was dealing with life. I was a school teacher full time. I hated my job, and I was serving everyone else. I was preaching full time. I also had my business full time. And at that time, I was going through a very dysfunctional marriage. And it was like I was being beat up in every different angle. And the trigger for me was the fact that I went to work and one of the students pulled a knife out. The child did not pull a knife out on me, but she pulled a knife out on another student. And I was there to try to diffuse the situation. And in doing that, right then and there, I realized I didn't have the support in the school. I didn't have the support from, the community, anything like that. And all of that triggered back to childhood trauma. See, I had never dealt with the domestic violence that I dealt with growing up with my parents. I never dealt with the fact that when a person has anger that is not projected correctly, it can set off other things. My weapon of choice is not only a knife, but it's also a gun. So for this sweet baby to bring a knife to school, I'm like, what? Wait, this could have been me. I see that she didn't have the support of her parents. I see that she didn't have the support of the school. And right then and there, I knew it. I was like, I just can't take it. And I had an appointment to go to the doctor. I had an appointment. It was time for that annual physical, everything. And you don't want to tell your doctors that you're going through, right? And so what did I do? I went to the doctor that next day. Took off work, went to the doctor, was talking to the doctor, told the doctor, you know what? I've been crying at work. This situation's going on. That situation's going on. And she was like, well, I recommend you going to see a psychiatrist. I was like, well, I have, some more business to take care of. And she said, no. I need you to go now. And I was like, what? She was like, yeah, I need you to go now. And soon as she said, go now, it wasn't even an hour later. I completely blacked out. Completely blacked out. I was like, no, I have another appointment. I got another appointment. She was like, no. I need you to go now. I was like, oh, no. I'll go this afternoon. I have some more things to do. And I completely blacked out. And when I came to, my godmother was pushing me outside and she said, you need to go to the hospital right now. And I was like, well, what happened? She said, you did not see that you blanked out and you grabbed a pen to stab this man in his neck? And I was like, no, ma'am. And tears just started flowing down my eyes. And she's praying and she's speaking in tongues and she's rebuking the spirit because she knew it was a spirit. But me being in the word, me teaching the word, I wasn't thinking about whether or not it was a spirit. I wanted to take the old boy out. I had been dealing with too much. Life had hit me. As a woman, we oftentimes handle life, with the mask on. And we try to show people that we have it all together and that we're doing such an amazing job, and we are. And yet at the same time, we can break. And that day I broke. And I went to the psychiatrist and she said, "Well, are you suicidal?" And I said, "No, ma'am, I'm not." She said, "You're not?" I said, "No, ma'am, I'm not suicidal. Why would I hurt myself?" No, I'm not, I'm not. I had enough sense to tell them that. And she was like, "So what happened?" And I explained to her what took place. And she said, "Oh." So everything just kind of compounded together. And I said, "Yes." She said, "All right. So what I would recommend is for you to go to the psych ward." And I said, "Well, no, ma'am. No, ma'am. I have babies at home." She was like, "Would you rather take care of yourself so that you can go back to your babies? Or would you rather lose any access that you have to your children?" And I had to make that decision. And so in one sense, it can be a little embarrassing. And yet the world didn't know. Only people that knew were those that were close to me. So yeah, that 3-month stint of being okay, y'all didn't catch that. 3 months, not the 72-hour hold, the 3-month stint of being in treatment actually saved my life.
And what treatment did you actually go through?
Psych. I was at the psych ward.
They gave you medication, counseling, therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you cope with that as a Christian?
I rebelled. I've never, even as a Christian, I've never liked taking medication. I've had health issues and I don't like taking medication. But to take the medication, and having been in the educational field and seeing how people respond to medication, seeing the students being like zombies at the school, taking Ritalin and Filocan and Prozac and things like that, I didn't want to take it. And yet I knew I needed to take care of my babies. I live here in Mississippi with no relatives. And so living here, I knew that I had to do what I had to do to take care of my children. And so I'll be honest, for the last couple of years, I've had therapy 4 days a week. I have a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a therapist, and a counselor, in addition to my business coaches and things like that.
Yeah.
And that's not even including my pastor. Because I value my health. I understand that if I don't, and I still take medication to this day. And I don't even think I have even said that. But yes, because I understand that it is a chemical imbalance. And I understand that a lot of the chemical imbalance not only comes from the trauma, but it can come from diet. It can come from your body metastasizing stress and trauma into illness. So I have done the research. Do I recommend that people take the medication? Yes. Do I suggest that people go get the help that they need? Yes. Have I paid out of pocket for the therapy and everything? Because your insurance will only pay for one. Yes. Because I realized it was a compound of issues. It was the sexual abuse. It was the church hurt. It was the domestic violence abuse. It was the daddy issues. It was the grief of divorce. I mean, all of those different things compounded, not to mention being a Black woman in business. You know what I'm saying? So being a pastor was not something that was on the highest level, because I couldn't go to the church and say,
I'm taking that.
Right. I can't be at every service. Because the medication that they have me on, some is an upper and some is a sleeper. People don't understand that.
Yeah.
I may not be able to get on the 5 o'clock prayer line because I'm just going to sleep because I struggled with sleeping the night before.
Yeah.
the church doesn't understand that, because they're like, no, 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 no. You have to be on a 5 o'clock prayer line. You have to be able to know your limitations and the stigmas that go along with it in ministry. They hurt, but God reminded me that the things that I go through are because he's allowing me to be the vessel for someone else so that they don't have to go through what I've been through.
Wow.
And it makes it all the better.
And so, you know, I love your story because it's the transparency, it's the honesty. It's like, you know, when I read articles about people saying, I wish I could talk about my mental health or mental health issues as much as I could talk about my diabetes, insulin.
Right.
You know? So if you go without your insulin, stuff's gonna start happening to your body. So the same way with the mind. We all have ups and downs of stress and dealing with stress, and if we don't deal with it properly, it wears down the body and the mind.
Yes.
And so, you know, when it comes to mental illness, any person can and it is a chemical imbalance. It can be hereditary. It can be in our genes. It can come, like you say, because of trauma. And it may or may not, but that comes from a professional to diagnose. But have you been diagnosed?
I have been diagnosed.
Okay.
I have been diagnosed with chronic depression, anxiety, PTSD.
And so with that, and I love what the transparency, because this is going to help somebody. Having that doesn't take away from your ministry or from doing God's will or living an effective life.
No. I mean, they have even said that I have been diagnosed with ADHD.
Okay.
And I call it a superpower. I mean, people don't understand. Once you understand your body and you understand what is necessary for you, then you can overcome anything. And yes, it's going to take prayer. Yes, it's going to take having a support system. Yes, there are days that I just want to stay in the bed, but no one would ever know it. I mean, because the world right now is all over social media. I mean, until I just mentioned it now and some of my other previous broadcasts, no one would ever know. I mean, y'all saw pictures of me all outside. I was taking pictures. Hair done. I mean, people didn't know. I mean, people don't know the truth unless you share it with them.
So I want to ask you a question because, like you said, we have those stigmas, especially in the church. As the church, we have had a lot of movements and a lot of belief systems. And there's one time, you know, everything is just, sometimes we over spiritualize everything. I know people that if the computer don't work, you know, it's the devil.
It's the okay,
if the car, you know, if you're going somewhere and your car breaks down, it's the devil attacking my car, the devil attacking my body. And so you got to be careful as saints, as Christians, at the church, at the body of Christ, and any one of us, we have to have that balance. And we don't always know what is behind everything, like diabetes, or whether it's the flu. You know, the flu is not a demon running around getting people sick, but it's just the natural effect of life. And so, has anyone at the church tried to associate your diagnosis with a demonic spirit?
I have never experienced that.
Okay.
Probably because of the boldness that I carry, and the fact that I don't take a lot of mess off people.
Exactly.
I haven't experienced that.
Because some people will, or some Christians or churches will associate any and everything, especially when it comes to mental illness, to a demonic spirit.
They will. And I've seen them do that when it comes down to other people, but I wish somebody would. Because, I mean, for me, I don't know if God just has me as the gatekeeper, but at the same time, why would, I mean, I always shoot for the underdog. I always shoot for the one that needs the assistance and the love and the support. But when it comes down to it, why dog somebody out because of something they can't control?
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know until I was 42 years old that my father had mental illness issues. He never told me. It was never a conversation. He was in the military, and he went through his breakdown when he went away in the military and had to leave myself and my mother when he went to boot camp. And in the military, they don't medicate you. You just honorable or dishonorable discharge. That's it. I didn't know. Just like I didn't know until I was 40 years old that my mother had dealt with a brain tumor when she was younger. And so when they diagnosed me with the brain tumor, you have to see the generational situations that take place. Because if you don't know and if you don't pay attention, you're just going to be doomed to repeat.
Yeah.
I didn't know that my dad was on medication. You know how the doctor will come in and say, hey, what's your medical history? Half the time, Black people don't share what their medical history is anyways. And if they do, they want to lie about it because they want to make sure they get life insurance. No, be honest, because you never know how it's going to transpire. People are having babies by people that have had mental illness. You need to make sure so that you don't, combine those spirits. It's not only a natural thing, it's a spiritual thing. And so being in the church, I have heard and seen people experience being ridiculed because of their mental illness, but I haven't personally. And I will check somebody in a second when it comes down to that entire ordeal, because I don't think it's right.
That's good. That's good. I love what you're saying because you're giving somebody somebody real hope. And ever since I wrote my book, I've seen the transparency of both sides.
Mm-hmm.
I've had my own personal experience, but even after being delivered or set free, speaking in tongues, walking with Jesus, I still have my moments where I get down and low, and I have moments where I need to open up to someone, whether it's a colleague, friend, family member, or my psychologist / counselor. Things I'm dealing with about my life. Even last night, I had to just open up about some things I was dealing with and feeling low in my spirit. But it doesn't make us less human,
Right.
because of those situations or those mental meltdowns or breakdowns that we go through. But it's how we cope with it. It's how it's how we respond to it. Are we going to allow it to completely take us over, or are we going to at least manage it? That's what you're doing. You're managing, your mental health. You're managing your emotions. You're helping yourself. It's like exercise. The weight don't come off in a few days. And then even when you get the weight off, you have to maintain it.
That's right.
So I'm still trying to get back down about 220, 215. When I get it down, I got to maintain it. And some of us, we can be free, but if we don't maintain that freedom, we can relapse.
That's right.
And even some psychologists or counselors say even relapse is part of the process of failure. And some of us don't know how to fail without giving up. So even
and
if
you have to fail forward.
yeah, fall forward, fail your way through the process. And I love what you're saying because you're giving hope to someone. And lastly, so and then you said your apostle is in the mental health field. I love that aspect because it means someone is not just spiritual enough to see in the spirit, but spiritual and mature enough to get into the field to try to help people. Understand the mind and understand the aspects in which God has given us and resources. And then you even say there are people, there's your mother, your daughter, and so forth, who have mental illnesses, and they're being treated and they're living their best life, and so forth. And what I love is what you're saying to me, and what I'm getting from this is you can still live your best life without caving into it and being completely reclusive, isolated, and letting it overwhelm you. You can still get treatment. Even, a lot of people don't get treatment, but the 80% that do get it, the ones that do get 80% productivity and improve. So treatment is available for those in the church, outside the church, but I think the church does need to become more equipped in this area where we can help those deal with these issues. And so what are some ways we can overcome the stigmas?
Be open and honest to where you are. I have people that come to me, and even in the writing community, and they say, well, you know what, I'm overwhelmed, or I'm depressed, or, I'm dealing with some anxiety about this situation or that situation. Be open and honest about it, regardless of what the stigma may be.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, we're still living.
Mm-hmm.
People don't understand. I became an international best-selling author, business owner, making over 6 figures income, even in the midst of going through depression. So I can't say that it has been easy, but it was necessary. So people, I encourage you to be open and honest, and to be around people who have overcome.
Mm-hmm.
Even therapists have therapists.
Yes.
I recommend that pastors have therapists,
Yes.
because the weight of the people and their issues can weigh on you. I have no problem telling people, you know what, that's too heavy for me. Let me refer you to somebody else. Or, oh, this season, I can't do it. Or, oh, I'm operating in my self-care, because I would just take on whatever someone brought to me. Mm-hmm. And even in ministry, you can't do that. Yeah. You can't feel obligated to that. And so, and please, being in this world, COVID-19, the whole pandemic,
yeah.
If you came out of that unscathed without any diagnosis, honey, you probably have one.
Self-denial. It's called self-denial.
Yes,
self-denial.
yes. And I need people to understand that just to be in isolation.
Yes, it was something.
Oh, I mean, can't go. And people, you have to know your strengths and get the help that you need. Exactly. And it may be non-traditional, but get it, because I can't stress enough that me getting the help that I needed, I'm able to support and help other people today. And I don't regret not one day in the center. I don't no, I was never one of those where they had to put the white jacket on me or anything like that.
They had to do me like that.
See, I was like, I'll listen, whatever y'all got me to do. Okay, I'll do it. I'll sit over in this chair. But we all have our different parts of our story, but I will say that I don't regret one day. I don't regret taking, taking the medication. I don't regret going away from my family during that season to take care of me. I believe that it has saved my life. I mean, and now I can serve in ministry better. Now I have a closer relationship with God than I've ever had. A personal relationship, not just the act of going to church, the religious side of it. I have a closer relationship with God, to the place where I can speak my truth and speak from a place of being victorious and not a victim. And so I encourage anyone, if this has been your story, or you have dealt with the stigmas, be okay with that. If you have failed, fail forward and do what you feel you need to do, and get the help, get the trusted help. Reach out to myself, reach out to you, reach out to anyone that can assist you in the process. If I'm not a licensed therapist, counselor, anything, I will refer you out, but I will tell you I'm a listening ear, and I will be there to help you, to let you know that you do have hope and you can overcome this.
Exactly. I enjoyed you, sister. You're living proof. And I enjoyed this interview because it gives hope again. Once again, to someone that you can have an illness or even be diagnosed, but it doesn't, watch this, it doesn't take away your value.
That's right.
It doesn't demean you, and we shouldn't demean other people, and we should be understanding and not especially not dogmatic towards it, without one understanding, truly understanding it. Mm-hmm. Until we understand something, we really can't bring resolution or resolve to that issue anyhow. My sister, I love you, and I thank you for your courage, and your strength to come on this interview. We love you. We bless you. Is there anything else you wanted to say as we conclude? If anybody want to reach you, how would they be able to reach you? If they want to publish a book or do anything, give contact information or so forth.
Yes, you can reach me in the Black Authors Rock community. You can reach me on all social media aspects under Black Authors Rock. I am tagged in this video under LaTracy. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, everything under just LaTracy. And I am an open vessel. I'm an open book. I don't have a problem sharing my story, and I don't have a problem letting you know that you're not alone.
Well, I enjoyed your sister. This is our another episode of Real Talk with Antoine D. Thurston, overcoming the stigmas of mental illness. Everyone have a wonderful day. We love you. God bless you, and God still has a plan for your life.